thanks for joining us today for our May tutorial on CorelDRAW Graphics Suite X7 Tracing Tips and Tricks. Now, what do we mean exactly when we talk about tracing? Tracing is basically taking a raster image, which could be a JPEG, bitmap or PNG file for example, and converting this into a vector graphic. And in today's webinar, we're going to be covering the following topics. We're going to be looking at the PowerTrace settings in depth, and along the way, we're going to look at how to avoid the most common pitfalls when you're tracing an image. Now, the quality of the final vector graphic will depend on various factors, including the quality of the image that you're starting out with, for example, the image resolution, the sharpness of the image, and how it was exported, and we'll go into that more later on. In addition, we'll also be covering the following topics: preparing and simplifying images prior to tracing so that we get the best possible result, reducing nodes in the resulting vector objects, which will give us a much cleaner, smoother result. Then we'll move on to font recognition, because as you will already know if you've ever tried to trace text, the results can be a bit hit and miss. We'll also take a look at how to convert the colours in our traced objects to a colour palette that best suits our output purpose. So let's get started. So the first image we're going to trace today is this seagull image. Let's zoom in to take a closer look. I can see in the Object Properties Docker that I have an image resolution of 628 pixels and that the color mode is 24-bit color. What this means is that this image has anywhere up to 16 million different color shades. Now, when we run this image through PowerTrace, the application is going to have to analyze these colors and create larger blocks of color for our final vector. For this reason, with very high-res images, you might first get a message pop up telling you that the image resolution is going to be reduced. To save time, we're going to start by cropping the image down to the size we actually need. This will allow the tracing process to run much faster. Once we've cropped our image, the next step is to select the image and click on Trace Bitmap. At this point, we need to decide which of the following options is best for us. I would choose line art if I was scanning in a line drawing or perhaps an architectural blueprint. The low quality and high quality image options, on the other hand, will result in an almost photorealistic graphic. But if the main purpose of my trace is to get a group of objects that I can create a cut line around, or if I want to convert my image into simple blocks of colour, for a logo for example, then I will be probably working with one of these three options here: logo, detailed logo or clip art. In this case I'm going to choose logo, because I'm not actually interested in recreating the seagull itself. I just want a group of vector objects that I can throw a cut line around. So let's click on logo. So as you can see, by default, under the options, remove background is checked. Now in this case we have just various shades of blue, and PowerTrace decided that this was going to be the background colour. But of course I still need to remove the rest of this background blue. So to do that I'm going to click on Specify Colour, which brings back all of the colours in my image. I'm now going to grab my eyedropper tool and, holding down the Shift key, I'm going to pick out all of the colours I want removed. I'm holding down the Shift key because it allows me to remove multiple colours. So, what else do we have in our PowerTrace window? At the moment I'm in before and after view, so I can see my original image and my trace. You could of course choose one of the other options. I've got the option to zoom in and zoom out, or view this in a whole window, and I can use the hand here to pan around the image if I want to see particular details. If you've made a mistake, for example if I pick up too many colours with my eyedropper tool, I can either go back one step or I can reset the whole of the trace result, in which case it will start again from the beginning. Under the options, we can choose to have a higher performance, which means the trace runs through faster, or we can choose higher quality, This takes a bit longer, but as the name suggests, the final quality will be better. When we merge colours, and we'll be looking at merging colours a little later on, you can choose multiple colours to merge to one, and in this case it's going to average out the value of the colours. So whether it's CMYK or RGB, you'll end up with the average value of all the colours you chose. Or you can choose to merge all of the colours to the value of the first colour you select. Now in this case I'm not going to go to the Colour tab. I'm not going to do much with smoothing or corner smoothing, we'll be doing that later on, because all I really wanted was a vectorized version of the seagull so that I can run a cut line around this. So all I'm going to do now at the moment is click on OK. But before we go, if you don't want to keep your original image, you can also click on Delete Original Image, and then you're left just with the final vector object. So here's our vectorized seagull. Let's just zoom into this. And what I want to do now is to run an outline around the outside. Now, whenever you trace an image, the resulting vector graphic is always a group of objects. So if I wanted to edit any one of these vector shapes that you can see here, the first thing I would need to do is to ungroup it. But in this case, I'm just going to go up to Object, Shaping, and go down to Boundary. Now, if the boundary tool is a tool that you think you're going to be using quite frequently, why not start up a little customized toolbar on your desktop? To do this, go back to the tool that you want to choose and holding down the Control and Alt key, just drag it to the desktop. We'll be adding more tools to this as we go along, but what I want to do now is to actually delete the seagull vector. So here we have the group of objects that we created in PowerTrace. I'm just going to press Delete. If I zoom into here, we can see that the outline is still quite rough. And this is due basically to the way that the trace interprets the pixels. So if an image is very pixelated, you will get some rough edges here. But luckily we have a fantastic tool called the Smooth tool. Let's just zoom back out again. So let's have a look at how the Zoom tool works. If I grab the Shape tool and I select this object here, you can see we have literally hundreds of nodes. So in the past, if you wanted to reduce these nodes, you had a couple of options. You could click on Select All Nodes and use the Reduce Node button to increase the smoothness of the curve. But having said that, if you click on Reduce Nodes, some nodes are removed, but only to the point where the shape of the object would start to change. So Reduce Nodes takes away as many nodes as possible without changing the shape. Here, the slider bar on the other hand, I can again reduce nodes here, but as I reduce the nodes, the shape is going to change. So the smoothing tool works in the following manner. The smoothing tool itself has two properties in the property bar. You can change the size of the nib and you can change the rate or intensity at which the smoothing effect is applied. If you're using a graphic tablet, this will also respond to pen pressure. Now we can also reduce or increase the size of the nib by holding down the Shift key. And we can increase or decrease the strength of the effect by holding down the Alt key. So I'm now at maximum strength here, and let's just zoom in here. So as I click on this object and now go down along the outline, you can see I have a very strong smoothing effect. But the positive thing is I can now choose where I want my object to be smoothed. So if I don't want to smooth out everything, I just need to smooth out the areas that need reworking. If I hold down the Alt key again and reduce the pressure, let's zoom in here again, it will smooth, but it's not smoothing to such an extent, so I'm keeping quite a lot of the detail. So let's smooth out our seagull outline, but before I do this, I'm just going to add another couple of tools to our custom toolbar. So I'm going to hold down the Control and Alt key, and first of all take my Shape tool over, and I'm going to hold down the Control and Alt key again and take over the Smooth tool. And this just makes it really handy to grab the tools that I need the most frequently. So selecting my seagull, I'm going to right click and choose a yellow outline so we can see this smoothing effect better. So here's my smoothing tool. Hold down the Alt key to increase the strength. And now I'm just going to go along, and you'll see as I'm going along I can just choose which parts of the seagull need smoothing. It's over here. And if it's smoothing too much, let's zoom out a little bit. Again, just hold down the Alt key, just reduce the pressure. So you can see it does a very good job of giving you a wonderful smooth outline to your traced images. And when I'm finished, all I have to do is just fill my objects, and I've got a very nice vector shape here. In this section, we're going to not only remove background colours, but we're also going to edit, merge and replace colours within the design. Also, if we take a closer look at this butterfly object, you can see, first of all, the outlines are quite rough. We have solid blocks of colour, but we also have gradients. So this, in an image that can give us up to 16 million colours, is going to result in a traced object that contains up to 100 or more colours, which is something we don't really want. So let's just zoom out again. The image is selected. We're going to go into Trace Bitmap, and this time I'm going to choose Detailed Logo. I have a lot more detail in this image, and I want to retain as much of that detail as possible. And here we have the situation where I have a high-res bitmap, and PowerTrace tells me that the bitmap is actually too large and needs to be reduced. Now this will slow down the tracing by a second or two, because as it's tracing it's also reducing the resolution, so we'll just wait for this to go through. Now as you can see here, it's removed the background here, but it hasn't actually removed the white from inside the circle. So what I'm going to click here now is Remove Colour from the entire image. So now that we have our image traced, I'm going to now go over to the Colours tab. So as you can see, we're now on the Colours tab, and we have 64 colours, and we're in RGB colour mode. If you want to use a different colour mode, for example CMYK for printing, now is the time to change the colour mode. If you change the colour mode after you've reduced the colours, it has the same effect as resetting the tracing process, so you'll end up with a whole bunch of colours again. So before you start to reduce the colours, choose the correct colour mode, CMYK, RGB, grayscale, black and white, or you can go down to more palettes and choose the precise colour palette that you wish to work with or convert to. So I'm now in CMYK colour mode. I have less colours here because the CMYK colour space is smaller than the RGB colour space. So let's start off by reducing some of the colours here, perhaps to 16. I'm now going to start merging colours together to see how many colours I can reduce this design to. So holding down the Control key, I'm just going to select the colours I want to merge together and click on Merge. I'm just going to continue control clicking on colours to merge them further. So as you can see here, we've now merged all of our palette down to 8 colours. The next thing I want to do is actually edit some of these colours. So I'm going to select one of the colours and click on Edit. I can now either grab my eyedropper tool, for example, and choose a different colour, or I can go to my mixers or to my models tab. So I'm just going to go over here and choose a different colour. So I'm just going to go through these colours now and edit the ones I want to change. So now that I've edited the colours, I could actually save all of my colours here as we see them now as a colour palette. To do this, just click on the Save symbol and I can save the colours here as my own custom palette. All I need to do now is to press OK to save my butterfly. This is a grouped trace, so I first need to ungroup it, and now I can remove the circle. If I want to do more with my butterfly, I can select it, click on Create Boundary, which I could fill with colour, or I could select the whole of the butterfly again and drag this over to the Colour Styles docker. Let's choose 3 groups. Now all I need to do is choose one of the Colour Harmony folders, rotate through the colour wheel, and instantly change the colours of. Our next image has a lot of detail, and it would look great engraved or printed out in black and white, for example. I'm going to go up to Trace Bitmap, Outline, and choose Clip Art because I want to get as much detail in here as I can. Reduce Bitmap and remove colour from entire image. Now because there's a lot of detail in here, I'm going to use my zoom tool just to zoom in on an area to see what the final result will be, and I can see already that I don't have as much detail as I need. At the moment I have 2 colours, almost 5,000 nodes and 69 curves, and I'm just going to adjust Detail Slider Bar somewhat, just to get a little bit more detail in there. And when I'm done, all I need to do is merge my colours down, and I'm going to edit this because I want pure RGB black. And we're ready to go. Now is a good time to introduce another tool, the Smart Fill tool, and holding down the Control and Alt key, I'm going to take this over to our new toolbar. Now the Smart Fill tool will fill in areas of adjoining or overlapping objects. So I'm going to use this now to create a bit more definition in this design. So with the Smart Fill tool selected, up in the property bar I'm going to choose Specify Colour, and I'm going to choose RGB black, which I'm just going to pick up with my eyedropper tool. The objects that are created within this design, I don't need an outline, so I'm just going to set this to no outline. And all I need to do now is click in the spaces to fill in areas of the design. Now I'm just filling this in with black at the moment, but for example if you're engraving or you're working with grayscale, you could of course at any point just go up to the property bar, choose one of the grayscale colours, and just add that. Now when it comes to tracing text, unless the text in the image, because these are both images, is very simple, sans serif, very blocky, for example like Arial Black, you are very rarely ever going to get a good result. But we do have a couple of tricks up our sleeves. The first thing I'm going to do is press Z on my keyboard to grab my zoom tool, and I'm just going to zoom around this text here. And as you can see, this is quite a low-res image. And what I want to do actually is just to, instead of trying to trace this, I want to do a font recognition and just look to see if perhaps I have the font myself. So I'm going up to Text and down to What the Font. And while we're collecting tools for our toolbar, I'm just going to press Ctrl and Alt and just drag What the Font up to our toolbar. Now once you select What the Font, the cursor will change to a bullseye, and what we're going to do is we're going to go around this word, just trying to get as many letters as we can. If we're happy with that, click inside, and What the Font will now go online and attempt a font recognition. On the MyFont website, we just need to go through the letters now and check that they've been recognized correctly. If letters get split, just drag them together. And once you've corrected everything, just click on Continue. You can now drag down the original text and just go and check which font this could possibly be. What the font works best with dark letters on a light background, and where you can sometimes have a problem is where you have a lighter text on a darker background. Sometimes not all the letters are picked up, but again there is a trick around this. So I'm just going to grab my rectangle tool, draw a shape roughly the same size as my text, click on the Quick Customize button, and I'm going to open up the lens docker. I'm now going to convert this rectangle into a color inversion lens. And let's just click on Apply. Now, when I move this lens over the text, I'm back to my dark letters on a light background, and I can start using What the Font again. But you only need this if you are actually having problems. Normally it will pick up most of the letters on the first try. So now that we've analysed the font and we've got a couple of suggestions of what a font could possibly be, where do we go now? Well, we've got a fantastic program included in the graphics suite called Corel Connect. And Corel Connect will allow you to put the name of a font in the Connect window and search for that font. So let's just open up Corel Connect. In Corel Connect we can see all of the content that's included with the Corel Graphics Suite X7. And we have here some filter buttons: folders, vectors, bitmaps, fonts and other. And we can decide what we're looking for. So if we're going to look for a font with a specific name, we can just disable these filters here. And I'm just going to add a search word here. Let's presume, for example, that the font we are looking for, or the font that was suggested on the MyFont website, was called Windsor. Hit enter, and it's now found that font for me. Also in Corel Connect, when you find a font, if you right-click on that font, you can install that font straight from the Corel Connect window. Now, by default, we're only going to be searching in the 1,000 fonts included with the CorelDRAW Graphics Suite X7. But under Favorite Folders, you can actually drag folders from outside from your desktop into your Favorite Folders segment here, and this will also be used when searching for fonts. And this happens to be my System Font folder. So at the moment I'm searching not only within the Content Exchange fonts, I'm also searching within my system fonts. And from Corel Connect you can right-click Install or right-click Uninstall any font. So using Connect is going to make it much easier to see if a specific font is already somewhere. Now that we've taken our first tour through using the main features in PowerTrace, we're going to turn our attention to some files that are going to cause us problems, even after using the more advanced features in PowerTrace. These are files that are still going to need some work done on them or cleaning up after tracing. So let's just have a look at this image here. In the Object Properties window, I can see from the start that it's very low res. And it's also been stretched up on the page. It's 600 by 422 pixels. And if we zoom in here, we can see we've got a lot of jagged edges going on here because of the low resolution. And it's not going to be a very clean trace. We've got odd pixels scattered throughout the image as well. So what can we do about this? Well, there's a couple of things we could try. The first thing I'm going to do is leave CorelDRAW and go over to PhotoPaint. So here's the image opened in Corel PhotoPaint. We have a plugin built into PhotoPaint called PhotoZoom Pro 3. It's a third-party plugin. So I'm just going over here to PhotoZoom Pro 3. When you first open up PhotoZoom Pro 3, you'll be asked to register. and it's a free registration, and this will send you an unlock key to unlock the plugin. So what I'm going to do here first of all is I'm just going to up the resolution. Let's up this to perhaps 600, and I'm just going to reduce the size a little bit, and you can already see that the edges are being smoothed out for us. What PhotoZoom does is it allows you to upsample an image, so you can take quite a low res image and basically increase the resolution. PhotoZoom does some clever calculating to do this. Let's make this a little bit higher. And I think I'm going to leave this like this and just save this. And I'm just going to call this upsampled. And save it to the desktop. So here's our original low-res JPEG. And this is the upsampled PNG file. And if I just zoom in here, I just flip this over so we can compare similar sides. And already you can see that after being sent through PhotoZoom, we've got a much better edge quality than we have in the original image. So for something as basic as logos, if the quality is really bad, it really does make sense to send this through PhotoZoom first, just to try and clean up these edges a bit. So zooming out again, I'm just going to delete the original, mirror this, and let's now take this into Trace Bitmap, and I'm going to start off with Detailed Logo. So, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove areas that I know I'm not going to need in the final vector graphic. So I'm first going to use my eyedropper tool to specify the colour, and holding down the Shift key, I'm just going to go through the image, and we can get rid of the drop shadows here as well. Just going through the image, cleaning it up, because it's a lot easier to do this while you're in Trace than ungrouping your object in Draw and doing everything by hand there. And when I'm done, I'm just going to click on OK. If you wanted to, you could of course go over to the Colour tab and reduce the colours down to 3 or 4. Or we could merge the colours, so any grey areas we can merge here. Let's just try reducing these colours. I'm going to start off with 5. Perhaps go down to 4. And here I have 4 colours. Of course, if I wanted pure white, I could go in and edit this. And on my Models tab, I would say 255. Or you can also type a name in the colour box. And let's just get nice pure colours going here. Let's type in red. Blue. And the grey we can leave as it is. I'm now going to zoom into my finished vector graphic and ungroup this. And let's just have another look at what we have here. So this seems to be a separate object that I don't need. This appears to be a hole. So I'm just going to grab my shape tool. Now, with the shape tool selected, it's quite hard to select around things at an angle because the shape tool wants to do a square selection. If, however, you hold down the Alt key, you can do a freehand selection. So I'm just going to select around this hole, holding down the Alt key, and press Delete on my keyboard to delete those nodes. And I've actually closed that hole here. Now if we zoom in a bit further, we can also see that this is not how it should be. So again, I would hold down my Alt key, select the edge nodes, and make all of these straight lines. Now I'm just going to delete a few more nodes here. Because the idea is to get everything as it should have been when we first trace this. So I'm just going to go around these nodes here, converting to lines. And any nodes I don't need, I can just remove as part of the cleaning up process. Here we have a great image of a ballerina. It's also high res, very good quality image. But because it is high res, and because of the type of image we have here, you can see we've got lots of transparencies, skin tones. What we actually get when we vectorize it are again a lot of vector shapes with not very smooth edges. And what I'm actually looking for is something more like this. I want a resulting vector that has a lot of solid blocks of colour. So how do we do this? Well, I'm going to start off first of all by selecting and copying my image. And I'm just going to paste this into a new document. Now, in this case, we're actually going to be working with the Object Manager. And the first thing I want to do is to create a duplicate of my image by selecting the object in the Object Manager, pressing plus on my numerical keyboard. Let's just do that again. And here I have the image doubled. Now, why do I need this image twice? The lower image, I'm going to right click and lock this to the page. In a little while we'll be using this lower image as a template for creating our vector objects. The upper image, because I actually have two images on top of each other, as you can see here. The top image I'm now going to send through PowerTrace. Let's choose Clip Art. And I don't need to change anything else here. I'm just going to say OK. So now we have a group of vector objects sitting on top of the original image. And what I'm going to do first is to run a boundary around this group of vector objects. So I'm going to click on Create Boundary. And once I've created that boundary, I can now delete the vector objects. And if I just scroll in for a second, I'm left with my original image, which is locked down to the page, with a boundary around the outside. We're now going to go over and grab one of our drawing tools. Let's choose the freehand tool. And it's quite important now that when we're drawing the lines, that we have overlapping lines. So I'm going to start drawing around the face area. Just making sure these lines overlap, because I now want to use the Smart Fill tool. So I click on the Smart Fill tool. I don't need an outline. And the colour I want to use is the skin colour. Click inside and I now have my skin-shaped object. Now this object is sitting above the boundary, so I'm just going to drag that below the boundary, and this line here we can just delete that. So here's our first object. So let's go back to our freehand tool, and now let's create some hair. So again, I'm creating an overlapping line. Go back to our Smart Fill tool, and now we're going to pick up the hair colour and click, and bring that brown object below the boundary. And this top curve we can now remove. So I'm actually working with the freehand tool, the Smart Fill tool, and working with the Object Manager just to place the objects in the correct position. So let's create one more object. Back to the Smart Fill tool. Bring this below the boundary and delete the curve. And so basically, if we go back to our original document, you just work your way through the image, creating these solid blocks of colour. And once you're finished, you can actually go to the original image, unlock it, and delete it. So we're coming near to the end of our tracing tutorial today, and I'd like to finish off with a couple of more tips for you. An image such as this one here looks at a distance fairly simple. To look at it, you would think it was just a brown and black image. However, because it is high res, when you run this through Corel Power Trace, you'll see that you end up again with objects that don't look very pretty. So let's just zoom in a little bit more here. So you end up with something like this. And the final trace here has got something like 34 curves, 7,000 nodes and 10 colours. But if you take that same image and convert it before you trace it to grayscale, you're going to get a much better result. So let's just try this. So I'm going to select this image, I'm going up to Bitmaps, Mode, and I'm going to convert this to grayscale. Because it's 8-bit, instead of a possible 16 million colours, we're only going to have a maximum of 256 colours. And let's now take this into Trace. So remember what the original looked like? And we'll go for, I think we'll go for logo with this one. So here we have a very nice clean result. There's one little object over here. Let's check the colours. Again, I could go through here, holding down the Control key, select some of these colours and gradually merge them all together. Let's just say OK to this. And this is our final trace. We would need to go in with the Shape tool and just tidy this up a little bit. But all in all, it's a much better result than if we'd have left this image with the original brown colours. Now, there's not much you can do about the quality of images that other people send to you, apart from ask them nicely to send you images of a good quality and resolution. But if you do have any influence over the images that you receive, then there's a couple of things I'd just like to point out. So the first of these is anti-aliasing. Now, when you anti-alias an image, what you're basically trying to do is create the illusion of having nice smooth edges. So when you save a JPEG, for example, with anti-aliasing, you're going to get quite a bit of noise along the edge where extra pixels are being generated to try and smooth out this jagged edge. If on the other hand I go over to an image that hasn't been anti-aliased, you can see I've got nice, clean, bold blocks of colour. So let's just put this to the test. I'm just going to select these three objects here. I'm going to export them. Let's choose JPEG. Selected objects only. And let's zoom in here. At the moment, anti-aliasing is checked, so I'm just going to grab here and just zoom in. And already you can see we've got extra colours in here that we don't really need if you want to trace something. So let's just take out the anti-aliasing check. And now I've got these nice, strong blocks of colour. So if anybody is sending you a photo of a logo, for example, just ask them if when they're exporting it, perhaps as a JPEG, just to uncheck the anti-aliasing box, and then you'll get a much better, crisper result when you send your image through PowerTrace. And the other thing that's worth taking a look at is dithering. Dithering will have a similar effect. If you're working with 8-bit colour, dithering will create a lot of extra pixel noise in your image and not give you these nice solid blocks of colour that you'd have if you had the dithering deactivated. To finish off our webinar today, we're going to take a look at a worst case scenario image. Here over on the left we have a photo of an embroidery. Let's just zoom into this. Look at that. Now, when you run this through Trace, you're going to end up with something like this, lots of little itty-bitty vector objects that you can't really do anything with. So, what do we do with this? Now, you start off, as we've done previously, by selecting the vector objects, and I'm just going to run a boundary around the outside. So here is the boundary. So let's just zoom in here. And you remember a little earlier at the beginning of this tutorial, we used our smoothing tool just to go in and smooth out those rough edges. So let's just do this quickly. So this just goes to show you that there's no case that's absolutely without hope, and that Corel Draw gives you so many great tools just for getting around these difficult issues. You might have to do another little bit of tweaking with the shape tool, but we'll get to that when we're that far. So let's just zoom out again and see how close we are to our original. That's not too bad. I'm just going to grab the shape tool and just drag this out a little bit. And I'm just going to pick up, with the pipette, just pick up a skin colour and just fill this. So now we need the hair. I'm going back to the drawing tool and I'm just going to do this very roughly now, making sure the lines are overlapping. I'm going to my Smart Fill tool, which you can access from there or there. No outline, and I'm going to pick up a hair colour. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm not going to keep drawing this. I'm going to first of all remove that line that we no longer need. So I'm now going to select the object, press the plus key to make a duplicate, and now holding down the shift key I'm just going to reduce the size of that. So plus on the keyboard, let's choose a paler blue, hold down the shift key and just go into here again. So you can see you can actually use the drawing tools, the Smart Fill tool, the smoothing tool, just to really quickly get from something like this to quite a very good shape. Now let's just go over here, and I just finish this off by using my ellipse tools, my drawing tools, just to finish off this face, because trying to work otherwise with something of such low quality is never going to work. So thank you very much for joining us today. I hope that this webinar has been useful for you, and I hope to see you in the very near future.